What's up, everybody? Jeff Cooper here. Welcome back to Blue Collar Heathen on YouTube. Today we have a fun episode coming up for you. 5 reasons why I wouldn't worship the Christian God even if he existed. We've gone from 42 at the beginning to now at 47 subscribers. So thank you guys. Thank you for everybody that signed up. Thank you guys so much. You guys are awesome. But we're still 3 short. We need 3 more people by the 1st of April. So if you're seeing this video and you haven't hit the subscribe button, do so. Hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, get the notifications. Stop over on Twitter and see us at BCHVids. And we're going to get to the video. As one might tell from the way I wrote the title of this piece, I have no respect for the Christian God. I don't bestow upon him the honor of a capital letter in either name or pronoun. This will often cause Christians to get miffed, and they've called me out on social media saying, "Don't you mean God with a capital G?" No. No, I don't. Let me give you a bit of a background. I was real sick as a kid, and I spent a lot of time in hospital because, from asthma attacks mostly. We lived in this old farmhouse that had been converted into apartments, and by American standards, the place was ancient, and it was just plagued with mold and rot. Gave me all sorts of respiratory issues when I was young. And spending so much time in hospital, there really isn't a whole bunch to do there other than to read and do crossword and jigsaw puzzles and build models. Now, I still build models. I mean, you can see the rockets behind us. One of the things I like to read at the time were fantasy stories. The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Fafhrd and Grey Mouser, Kull and Conan, the Greek and the Roman and the Norse myths. I enjoyed those stories. They were entertaining to me. And, fast forward a couple of years, and my mother borrows some money from my great-grandparents. And the loan came with the caveat that you got to take them boys to church. So we wound up being dressed up on Sunday mornings in itchy sweaters and annoying jackets and those shades of brown and green corduroy that now only exist in faded photographs of decades gone by. So we were schlepped off to the United Methodist Church across the way, and there they told us more stories. These ones Jewish in nature, but very similar to the Greek and the Roman and the Norse myths with which I was familiar. Now, what struck me as odd is that the people I thought of as grown-ups at the time, they believed that these stories were real. I mean, these people could drive and had jobs and didn't live with their parents and everything. And they thought that these were true. The area in which I lived was about a 50-50 split between Catholic and Jewish. Protestants were a vast minority. So for most of my childhood, I identified as Christian because I knew I wasn't Jewish. But that was more like a cultural thing rather than really believing any of the bit about the walking on water or rising from the dead or feeding the masses with 7 fish. Because I knew then that type of stuff just didn't happen. It was like, people will be rising to the heavens and becoming constellations, or Medusa's stare turning you to stone, or the lines on Devil's Tower being gouged in there by a giant bear. So I didn't really believe, but I didn't really realize that atheism was a thing. Not until I was like 19 or 20. Because I had a friend who went all 444 shades of God nuts when he stopped doing cocaine. And he told me that, hey man, if you have any questions about like the Bible or God or prophecy or anything, dude, just give me a call and, I'll be happy to discuss it with you. We can clear up some stuff. And, I was like, all right, all right, dude, that'd be cool. I'd like to clear up some stuff. So I took him up on his offer. I quickly realized that he was much less interested in clearing things up than he was in getting me to believe as he did. And I remember one time in frustration when he says to me, well, you must be some kind of atheist or something. And it was the way he said it. There was a showing of teeth. He meant it as a vile insult. The way you call someone a piece of shit. It was the face that bigots made when they called someone racial slurs. I looked up what an atheist was after that, and I said, okay. Internalized it a little bit. My initial impression from him was that it was something horrible, but was it really? I mean, it's not my fault their stories sucked, were full of logical errors and plot holes. I mean, you'd think if God was real, he'd have gotten better writers, or at least a better editor, for fuck's sake. I mean, Clark Ashton Smith and H.P. Lovecraft had better gods than the Bible did. Huh. Could they all have been made up? The Greeks, the Romans, the Norse, the Egyptians too? Writers write. That's kind of what we do. Besides, kick ourselves in the teeth on a fairly regular basis because we're all the degree of batshit crazy. But writers write. So ancient writers, lacking editors, they would have had to have written for whoever had the money and whoever was in charge. And a great way to keep writing was to make whoever is in charge and their station look good. And a great way to make their station look good would to have them be divinely chosen to rule. But to divinely choose something, you need gods that do things, so God stories became a thing. Now this applies right through all culture myths, including the Jewish and Christian ones. Consider that the Jews were God's chosen people. They had chosen prophets who prophesied the Messiah, the King of the Jews. Now since that time I've moved away and I don't live where I grew up anymore. But most of the people with whom I have to deal on a daily basis are Christian. And I've had discussions with some of them, and often it still seems like they want you to believe as they do, and they will still get frustrated when you don't. Often they'll even say, well, if God was proven to be real, would you worship him then? If Jesus really was the Son of God, would you worship him? Now, sometimes they even phrase this as a variation of Pascal's wager, which we're not going to get into all the problems with that. But let's just pretend for a moment. Let's just pretend for a moment that the Christian God and the Christian Jesus were real. Would I worship him then? No. And Christians, if that's your end game, let me save you the trouble. No. Save your breath. I wouldn't worship him. And here's my top 5 reasons why I would not worship the Christian God, even if it could be demonstrated that he were real. Number 5, he's something of an idiot. I mean, not to put too fine of a point on it, but there it is. Consider the flood. The best he could do of all of humanity with his omniscience and omnipotence was pick Noah to save the biosphere. Noah, who had no experience in carpentry or shipbuilding, animal husbandry, or botany. And he sends this guy on a boat with all the animals and all the plants, presumably, for a year. when Noah gets off the boat, he slaughters a bunch of the animals that he had cared for in praise of the God, and then proceeds to get shit-faced drunk on wine. If that's the person that God chooses to save the biosphere, that's just a fool, and I'm not going to worship that. Number 4 reason. Well, he's needy. He wants adoration and devotion from all people, everywhere, all the time. And I'm sorry, but no, that's just not happening. There isn't any person or entity that is going to get more of my love, more of my attention, more of my adoration than my children. And that's a fact. If you're not my kids, you don't get it, you don't qualify, you're beneath consideration, get over yourself. Number 3, he prolongs suffering. Now, I'm not talking the problem of evil. That's a separate issue. I'm talking actually prolonging suffering. Consider the Exodus. We know it didn't happen, but we're granting for a moment that it did and that the scriptures are true. He took his chosen people and willfully kept them in Egypt longer in slavery so he could get into a dick-swinging contest with Pharaoh. Every time Pharaoh was going to let the Jews, his chosen people, go, God hardened his heart, thereby keeping them there longer. This is the prolongation of suffering. Any person that does that to his chosen people is not someone with whom I wish to associate. Number 2. He's divisive. An omnipotent, omniscient God would recognize that his continued failure to interact with humanity, as he once did, would lead to many different ideas about his nature, what he wants, how he wants us to live, in what way is best to praise him. This creates many different factions of Christianity, and none of them agree with each other. Some of them actually hold each other in contempt. Consider, diverse groups like the Roman Catholics, the Westboro Baptists, and the Mormons. There are a great many Christians that would say, well, they're not really Christian, and there's a bunch of infighting. Now, either the Christian God wants that infighting because he's like a troll on Twitter and gets off on it, or he's a narcissist and gets off on the praise that all of these different factions bestow upon him to, to show that they're right. Either way, that's not someone I want to interact with at all. And that brings us to the number 1 reason. The number 1 reason I would not worship the Christian God, even if he could be proven to exist. He's useless. He's useless. Continuing to grant that he's real and has all of the omni-attributes Christian theology wants to throw upon him, he's unnecessary. Where, even if he created life, the universe, and everything, he didn't need to. These could have come about by natural processes. Where the Bible says that he wrecked towns, he always did so by natural occurring events. So, when he gave his chosen people the law, with capital letters and everything, he had a guy go up a mountain and write it down. I already said writer's right. Homeboy could have come up with it his own self, because there's nothing in those 10 commandments that is beyond human understanding, beyond human comprehension, or beyond human interpretation. Human could have wrote those. adding in God does nothing to the understanding of these phenomena. Natural wonder, appreciation of aesthetics, and our inherent curiosity, these provide inspiration. Appealing to him to create divinely inspired works is to take additional, unnecessary steps. Human evolution as a social species indicates evolutionary development for morality and empathy. So prescriptive proclamations by omni-ruler are really, when you think about it, they're the biggest problem of religion as a whole. So if he is the source of all morality, he has a lot of answering to do. And being omniscient, he'd know it'd be better off if he hadn't. With our large, evolved primate brains, we can reflect and ponder our past and imagine how things could have been differently had we done something else. But we have no way to test that. Life has no rewind button. As often as you can replay a situation in your head and say, well, if I had done this, then this logically follows as a sequence of events, there's no way to test that you really could have made that decision at the time. The theological libertarian free will that God is supposed to have endowed upon us is a blind assertion. It cannot be demonstrated to be real. So no, Christians, no. If your God is real, I won't worship him. According to your scriptures, he's needy, foolhardy, cruel, divisive. He's something of a troll and ultimately useless. Your God serves no purpose, has no place in the universe, has no facet of reality in which he serves any particular function. And the world goes right along as if he never existed and never intervened. He is not required for the formation of the universe, or of this planet, or life, or of any phenomena we can observe or infer. He is at best an ancillary being, rather than a necessary one, if he exists at all. He is not needed for and serves as a great obstacle to morality, knowledge, and understanding. Invoking his name serves only to halt further inquiry. It does absolutely nothing but needlessly complicate the reality we inhabit. The very best that you could do to speak to his necessity would be to invoke the insignificant miracles he's said to have caused. Lot's wife, the staff to snakes, the resurrection of Christ. None of these can be demonstrated to be actual events, but if that's the track you wish to take, I wish you the best of luck. I mean, what would really change if they weren't for you? What would really change? What would change if Lot's wife was never turned to salt? What would change if the Red Sea were never parted? What would change if Jesus never rose from the dead? That would maybe make your religion not true and unbelievable. But here's a newsflash. Most of the world already doesn't believe your religion. It's not that significant. So, there you go. That's all I got for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's great to have you here. Just remember, the Blue Collar Heathen Improbability subscription drive continues. We are seeking 50 subscribers by the 1st of April. We have a few days left, so if you have not already, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, stop over on Twitter, see us at BCHVids, and we'll see you next time. Take it easy.